have the greatest job in the world, and that's working with dogs.
Best in Show winner is the French Bulldog.
Winston won the National Dog Show. It was amazing. It was exciting. And to have a dog to be #1 dog in this country, you have to have great nutrition. And I always fed Pro Plan. Just like us, when we eat well, we feel good. And I just love that food and what it's done all these years to all the dogs I've bred and all the dogs I've shown.
Welcome to Pure Dog Talk. I am your host, Laura Reeves, and this is a very exciting day. I have actually been trying to put together an interview with Carol Grossman for 5 years. So I am nothing if not persistent, and thanks to our mutual friend Dan Palantino, we got this done. And so Carol Grossman, the Queen of Great Danes, is joining us today along with Tristen Lawrence and Jackie Van Delft. And we are going to hear some really powerful stories about teamwork and friendship and working towards a common goal in a very iconic breeding program within our sport. So Tootie Longo and Longo Great Danes were exceedingly famous and are, as I said to these ladies earlier, even to me, not a Great Dane person, not Great Dane adjacent, even I know of Tootie Longo and the Longo Great Danes. Carol, our friend Carol Grossman, was the handler who piloted the second Black Great Dane in breed history to an all-breed Best in Show. This was a dog named Best in Show, Best in Specialty Show champion Longo's Chief Joseph. And this was 91, 95, top sire for like 4 years over the course of a couple decades. You know, this is a dog that had a lot of accomplishments and just a huge part in the history of the Great Dane breed. And so I would love to hear from you ladies. A brief introduction from each of you. Carol, I'm going to have you start and introduce yourself. And then we're going to go to Tristen and Jackie, and you guys can kind of share how you are working together in this world of Great Danes today.
Well, Laura, I started in Great Danes in 1969. My husband then, Chuck Whitney, hence the Carol Whitney Grossman name, decided he wanted to handle, as did I. But being the good wife at that time in history, he got his license first. And that was back when AKC actually licensed professional handlers. Me being the good wife, let him handle for a year before I applied for my license. So for a year, I was his bucket bitch. And then I applied and was accepted. And I believe I was in the last group of handlers to apply who actually got licensed. After that, the American Kennel Club decided they weren't going to license anymore. Okay. So that's kind of how it all happened. We started out as breeder owners. We owner handled a few dogs, and I just decided breeding was not for me. I had terrible nightmares once the puppies were gone. Were they alive? Were they being tortured? You know, were they being fed? And I just decided that was not a path I wanted to continue on. So I just decided handling was where I fit in to everything. So I started out with some really great dogs. Saltwater Taffy. I handled her. First time I handled her, I put a 4-point major on her, and I did really well. I had some beautiful dogs, and we won. And sometimes I wondered how we won, but we did win. And it was pretty much a sewn-up sport at that time. You had Ernie Riccio, Dan Lasky, and Lena Vesquette. So with only 3 pieces of the pie being available, even to get a reserve was a luxury. So
and Carol, talk a little bit about those entries. You're talking about the 70s on into the early 80s when I came into it.
Yeah, I
They're
was licensed
huge.
in 74,
Yeah.
and the entries were fairly large, much larger than they are today. And as I continued to handle, they got even larger. And our, our nationals were huge. Um,
So what are we talking? 500, 1,000? What kind of numbers were you seeing at your national?
we were talking 500 or more,
Hmm.
and big classes.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, at that time, color dogs were AOC, any other color, and blacks, blues, harlequins were all lumped into one class,
Mm.
which kind of shows how much was thought about those colors at that time.
Right.
Um, Eventually, as color dogs started to win more, they did divide the class into the five
Hmm.
colors. So, but at first it was pretty hard, especially if you had a couple of really good AOC dogs. You had to get out of that class
And then you still
in
had to
order
beat the
to
fawn.
win. Yes, and then you had to still beat the fawns and the brindles.
Right.
So it was very different from what it is today.
And so
Um,
the Black Great Danes that Tootie developed, talk to us a little bit about that, about working with those dogs that even in my mind's eye, I can still see those heads and those bodies on those dogs. Talk about how hard it is to develop quality in an uncommon color. This applies across a lot of breeds.
yeah, at that point, Tootie was new. She was a novice as well. We both kind of started at the same time. She finished her first Great Dane, Genghis Khan,
Mm.
and that produced Cheech and his sister Dee Dee. Dee Dee was finished by Tootie from the bred by exhibitor class, the first color dog to be finished owner handled for bred by.
Mm.
And Cheech at that point was handled by, I think, Spike Garrick showed
Mm.
him, and a couple other people showed him. And I kind of fell into that opportunity. Unbeknownst to me, I was not the handler of choice. And the handler of choice, unfortunately, made the stupid mistake of saying, "Oh, well, I'm showing this black dog now, and he's really a piece of shit, and I'm winning with him."
Oh
And so,
my.
yeah, I, excuse me?
I said, oh my.
Yes, that's what I said when I heard the story. And what happened was Tootie went back to talk to Joe, and they decided that that was not the handler for them. That if a handler was going to take their money, they didn't want that handler exercising that option of telling his opinion about the dog. You handle the dog, obviously, if you're going to accept the dog as a client, you think the dog has the quality to win. And you
Yeah.
don't go, the dogs that you don't think are good enough. I mean, I have always had a 10 show rule because I found that if you turn somebody down, they would go to another handler. That handler would show the dog and show the dog. And by the time they realized that the dog wasn't good enough, they had already spent so much money, you almost always lost that person to the sport. So keeping the person in the sport was very important. I had a 10 show rule.
Hmm.
Let's do 10 shows. At the end of 10 shows, let's evaluate what the dog has done,
Yeah.
and then we'll go from there. And that always seemed to work really well for
It
me.
was my rule tool, Carol.
Yeah,
That was how I did it as a handler. So that makes total
right.
sense to me.
And that way you don't insult
Yeah.
anybody,
Yeah.
and they get it. And when they get their next dog and it's a good dog,
They'll
you
come
get it.
back.
It doesn't go to another handler, right?
That's the one.
So that was one of my little secrets. I mean, I
Hmm.
didn't advertise it, but that's how I dealt with it.
Yeah.
And it seemed to work for me. Well, when I was asked to show Cheech, obviously I was very, very surprised. And I thought it was just a hell of a compliment that they would come to me.
Right.
And that kind of started the whole relationship. Back then, the Gazette was in print. When we would decide on shows, we would wait till 11 o'clock at night when the phone rates went down because we would be on the phone for an hour or two, strategizing where we were going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And Lena Basquette played a big part in that.
Mm-hmm.
So we could kind of figure where Lena was going. So fortunately for me, living in Maryland, I could go in many different directions to show
Mm-hmm.
my dogs,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't forced to go to all the shows that Lena went to.
Head to head,
And
right?
excuse me, that was a part of our strategy. So occasionally we had no choice. We had to go against her.
Sure.
And we did. And we had decided that it was Henry Stecker judging, and it was the New Jersey show, and it was a single show. And we knew Lena was going to go to Ohio. We knew she was going to win the breed in the group, so he was have to stay for best in show. So we gambled that she wouldn't make the 8-hour drive back to New Jersey. Well, when I walked out of Joe and Tootie's motorhome in the morning, who did I see? The very first person was Lena. And she saw me and she came running over and she sat down in one of the chairs under the awning and she said, "Oh my God, I'm exhausted. I drove all night and and I didn't even have a chance to change my clothes. I just put some powder down my girdle and here I am." So I went in and I said to Judy, "You're never going to believe who's here." And she looked at me and I said, "Yes, the lady is here."
Oh my
So
goodness.
we went to go to judge and it was Henry Stecker and I was picking up my armbands and he looked up at me and he said, "You know, the lady is here." And I said, "Yes, sir, I know. What are you doing here?" I said, "I came to show my dogs." So I had a couple of dogs. I won one class. I went in, I went winner's dog, and I thought, oh, he's so kind. He's not
Here's
going to
my
let me
gift.
walk away empty handed. And then we go into bitches, and I had a couple of bitches, and I went winner's bitch. And I thought, oh, wow, this is really going to be a beating in the breed. And lo and behold, he gave Cheech the breed.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it was toward the end of Special K's career.
Mm-hmm.
And as I took the ribbon and as I went to walk out of the ring, I heard him say, she said something to him and he looked at her and he said, "You see the way she's standing? That's the way she moved." And he gave us the group that night. And, it was just very unexpected, but I don't think it was a bad decision. I think it was the right decision. But
Well, of
anyway,
course.
everyone has their own opinion. And 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 so that's how we strategized where to go with the dog. It was
Right.
not just we got a premium list. We always went to Pennsylvania because it
Right.
was close, and we always went to Ohio. We did strategize who would put up color, who we knew
Right.
had put up color, or who had put up her dogs. And when they were available, that's where we would go. So that's kind of how the whole history of showing Cheech went.
Trupanion is revolutionizing medical insurance for pets by providing the best possible experience to our members. And it's not some space age dream, it's happening now. We pay your veterinarian directly while you're checking out, and we're the only ones who can, which means you have decisions in seconds, and you don't have to wait for reimbursement. So, unlike with other providers, you'll keep more money in your pocket. Ask your veterinarian if Trupanion can pay them directly, because there's pet insurance, and then there's Trupanion.
Well, and I think that again, the teamwork that you had with Tootie is a big part of what we're talking with Tristen and Jackie now, right? And so I wanted to ask Tristen to introduce yourself and how you fit into this amazing group of women here.
Well, let me start by saying I'm honored to fit in with Carol Grossman. holy cow.
Yeah.
I, to think of her now as a friend or, uh, honor, truly. But I'm a third generation handler. My parents and both of their parents on both sides were very active in the breed as breeders as well as handlers. So there's never been a time that I didn't know this life, didn't know, I remember Tony Longo as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
And so, you know, growing up knowing the power and what she'd built in our sport was incredible. And for her to, come to me and say, we want you to show our dog. I can't describe how proud, how incredible that was to me. So
Amazing.
it
And
is.
Jackie, introduce yourself and your, which part you're playing here. And I really want you to pick up on just the emotionalness of these last year or so.
Well, I came in to the Dane world in 2012 after I started off in horses
Mhm.
and I had a tragic loss of my one horse. And ever since I was little, I always wanted a Great Dane. But my parents always told me, no, they're too big. And I was always like,
So
one
let's have a
day I'm going to have
horse. I mean, come on.
yeah, yeah. And I was always, ever since I was little, I always said, one day I'm going to have a Great Dane and I'm going to show it. And they're like, okay, keep dreaming. And after I lost my horse, I used it as an opportunity to do something else I've always wanted to do. And I started going, I used to go to some of the local dog shows that I knew about growing up. And I used to talk to some of the breeders, and I was always like, I really want a black Great Dane.
Mhm.
Everybody was like, oh no, you got to start with a fawn. Like, you can't start with black. It's too hard. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, I like fawns too. So I got my first fawn puppy back in 2012. And I joined the Great Dane Club of Cleveland even before I had a Great Dane yet. I just wanted to get involved with the breed any way that I could. And Tootie Longo was one of the club members. And that's how I first met Tootie. And at the time, they were still campaigning and Scout was still showing a lot. And so I didn't see them as often, but on occasion I'd see them at like a show and say hi. And, it was always nerve wracking because she's like the legend in the
Yeah.
Dane world. It was very intimidating to go up to her, being a nobody. And I always wanted a black Great Dane. And after I met my husband, our second date was him coming to a dog show with me, and he got hooked too.
Oh
And we were
man. Okay, women listeners, we need to all of us take notes. Jackie, continue.
yeah, and we were at one of the dog shows, and Scout was there. And Danny went up and he's petting her and he's like, oh my gosh, he's like, it was his first time seeing a black Great Dane. And he was like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. And I was like, do you know who you're touching right now? I was like, that's Tootie Longo's dog. That's the number one Great Dane. And I'm like, oh my God, you're touching like a prize dog. Like, and
Right?
he's like, that's what we need to get. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to get a black puppy. And, I was always intimidated to approach Tootie about anything. And down the road, we were supposed to get a black Great Dane puppy, but it fell through. And I was pretty upset about it. And my husband's like, you need to message Tootie Longo. I'm like, you don't just message Tootie Longo? Like, are you crazy? I was like, she's not going to respond to me. And he's like, just message her. And I ended up sending Tootie a message, and she invited us over for dinner. And we went over there, met Marco, Scout's litter mate, and fell in love with him. And after that, Tootie pretty much took us under her wing, and we became really good friends. And then down the road, when Scout was bred, it was after one of the Dane meetings, Joe and Tootie came up to me and they're like, you're going to be getting one of the scout puppies. And oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how that felt. I mean, it was a shock. And after that, I mean, the rest is history. I got my first Longo puppy, and he was amazing. He was my heart dog. But we would go to the Longos. I mean, we would be there every weekend to twice a month. We were always at the Longos. We were very lucky. We only lived 45 minutes away from them, so we spent a lot of time, and we got to go to all the shows together. And she just became a part of the family, or I became part of hers. And it's just that was it. She wasn't getting rid of me.
I love that. So, Carol, you were instrumental in working with Tootie and Jackie and deciding on Tristen as a handler going forward. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, but I'd like to do a PS to what
Oh,
Tristen and
okay.
Jackie have said. Up until the end, when she was going to the shows with Jackie, she would call me and say, "Oh my God, Peter Green remembered who I was," or "Joe Vergnetti remembered who I was." As as much of an icon as she was very, I don't know, she just would never really thought of herself as an icon, whereas Joey and Peter were icons, and she didn't realize that they felt that way about her. That was Tootie. Um,
So
she just was not, she wasn't assertive about who she was. And she didn't realize, I think, until the end how famous she really was, that she carried a legacy of dogs through the years that she showed. She knew she had beautiful dogs, and she knew she had a great line, and she knew that she was lucky in picking dogs, but she never really realized what an icon she was. So along came Jinx, and Tootie said, "I would like for you to look at her." So I flew to Ohio, and we went to Jackie and Danny's, and we looked at her. I stacked her. I went over her with a fine tooth comb, everything. And then I had to have Jackie move her
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't really run anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jackie gated her for me down and back. She went around in a circle. And when we went back to Tootie, she says, "Okay, what do you think?" And I said, "She's beautiful, but she's probably 6 months away from really being ready. My
And what
advice
year was
is,
this, Carol? Remind me what year this was.
this would have been what,
22.
22,
22, yeah.
22?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh, I said I would wait 6 months. I would bring her out when the judges looked good.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't campaign her. I would just show her and get her ready to go for 23.
Mm-hmm.
Well, unfortunately, the co-owner that was really backing her decided, "She's beautiful. I want to show her now." So I think when you get to Tristen, she will tie up that little
Right.
loose end. But anyway, um, they showed her, and you know, she did great with Tristen. Now, picking Tristen was, for me, not difficult because there were certain points that we had to hit to make this a good experience for everyone. So logistically, Tristen was in the right spot. She had just come off of a winning, that's what Trudy said to me. "Well, she just came off of a Best in Show Dog #1 Great Day." And I said, "Who cares? That's great for us." I said,
Exactly.
"And remember, that dog was brown, Tootie. This bitch is black." I said, "She's petite, she's blonde, and they'll look great together. And logistically, it would suit Jackie and Danny because then she could go home and spend time at home and come back to Tristen. So it wasn't like I'm giving up my dog for a year and I'm never going to see her again. That was very important. We wanted them to be happy and enjoy it and not sit home and not be able to go to all the shows and miss some of it.
Right.
So that we put all that together and it was Tristen. There just was nobody else. I mean, there were other handlers that Judy had used that she mentioned, and I always had a reason why we couldn't use them. They're too far away. Jackie and Danny will never get to see Jinx. That's important. If you want this to work, you have to think of them. Just like you, Tootie, how many times did you give up your dogs to somebody? In 2 years, Cheech spent the night with me once because they had to go home for their son's high school graduation. So they were always
Yeah.
there.
And I
And
think,
that's
Carol,
something.
that's such a great, the synergy is so good. And it's not like you're going to fly a Great Dane around, right? Like you
No,
gotta, there's no popping it in the overarm, carry on. So
no.
Tristen, pick up on that a little bit, what Carol was talking about, because I mean, it is a lot of pressure, right? And it's been an emotional lot of pressure. So talk a little bit from that perspective.
Absolutely. I'll never forget Tony Longo approaching me at the Madison, Ohio shows. They were local for her. And she said, I want to go to breakfast tomorrow morning. We have a beautiful we want shown. And I want to talk to you. So my mom sat down to breakfast the next morning with Tootie and Jackie and Danny. And her exact words were, I don't go for anything less than number one. That's the goal, point blank.
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's no, so right off the bat, it was, you know, they say they say you can't eat an elephant, but one bite at a time. And I was sitting there staring at, holy cow, we're
Yeah.
we're gonna go, and Jinx was beautiful. She's everything I want to see in a Great Dane. I wholeheartedly believe in her. You know, I said, you guys tell me. I, so I was daunted by the challenge, but very excited by it because you know
Yeah.
she was beautiful, Great Dane. She's
Yeah.
what
And
should go out.
what has she got? 36 specialty wins or something? I mean, she's done quite well for you.
She got that in I think about 7 months, 8 months of showing.
Wow. Wow. And Jackie, talk to us about, because you get to see her a lot. She's with you. So conditioning
Yeah.
a Great Dane is not for the faint of heart. It is, and I know you've got wonderful mentors, Carol, to pull from. But talk about the work that you're putting in on that.
Well, Danny and I, we were really grateful for the opportunity that was given to us
Yeah.
by all our owners. And it was a lot of work and dedication. I mean, everything contributed to making sure Jinx was always show ready. Did a lot of biking.
Mm.
I remember if my backyard was too wet, we'd go to a local park and I'd go bike her over there, making sure she was eating enough or not getting too fat, not getting too skinny, making sure she's ready at all times.
Mm-hmm.
I know Carol would call me, she's like, just walk her, just let her go walk. And I mean, we were walking, we were running, we were playing. But it was a really cool experience, really cool opportunity, and I mean we're really grateful for everything that we were given for that year.
And Carol, I guess what I would have you sum up for us is talking about the team. I mean, this is three really great women right here. Each one of them has a position on the team, right? So you're kind of the quarterback. Talk to us about how you pull that together.
It was just always working with Tootie.
Mm,
Um, she would tell me, here are the shows. What do you think? Where do you think we should go? So we always discussed entries before they were made and
mm,
where we thought she could go. And we tried to keep it good for Tristen so that she wasn't missing her dogs, her class dogs, because that was important to us that, she was able to keep everything, her business together and still show the bitch. That's important
yeah,
because, you I know a lot of handlers have given up everything to campaign a dog, and when the dog's gone, they have nothing.
don't have any
They have
clients
to
left.
start all over again.
Yeah.
And we didn't want that to happen. As a handler, I saw that, and Tootie understood what I told her. She knew I was right. And so it was really a group effort so that everybody was happy. And it worked out so well. I mean, usually you have one that gets crabby about it, and is insulted that maybe what they wanted isn't what is actually done. But we
Mhm.
never had that problem, nor did Chitty and I about showing her dogs. Like I said, we strategized a lot. So when we finally decided what to do, it was a group effort. It was a decision we both made and we were both happy with. And for the most part, we were really right most of the time. So, you know, uh,
Happens when you
uh,
have smart women involved, isn't it?
that's right. And trust me, it helps to take that color of a dog at that point in time to where Cheech ended up being.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had been one way and she had been the other, it would have been very difficult. But I don't know. It was almost like we were sisters. We really got along and we respected each other. They didn't treat me as just hired help, which unfortunately some people do. I was more than hired help. I was really part of the family. They were part of my family. So they went to weddings and I went to weddings. And so it wasn't just the dogs, it was more than that. So, and it was really a great relationship. I mean, one I miss sorely.
I know you do, honey. I know you do. In closing, from each of you, Jackie first, advice. What pieces of advice can you offer other people to aim for the type of win-win-win that you guys had?
I think just being dedicated to your passion. You're always learning. Listen to what everybody has to say, whether you agree with it or not. I think you can never stop learning about the breed. I've learned a lot from Tootie. Um, and it's don't give up. I'm just your average everyday person, and luckily I've made some really good friends who have helped make dreams come true for me. And it truly becomes a big family, and family's important. And at the end of the day, you have to remember your family. And, it might be a dog show, but at the end of the day, you're all going home with your best dog and you're going home together. And that's always been important to me.
I love that. Tristen, last word to you, dear. Third generation, you bring a lot of background, so bring your best thoughts to share with people.
No, absolutely. Definitely to echo what Jackie said, family has always been the most important. I, I'm certain that's why I've ended up here doing what, my family has done for 3 generations. And my parents always made it a big point to be kind to everyone at the dog show, to go out of your way to help the people that, you know, look like they need help, don't aren't sure what they're doing, need to point it in the right direction. And always my goal is to be kind Everyone is there to win. Everybody has goals, everybody has dreams there, and be kind. That is
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Okay. I am so grateful to the three of you for sharing your wisdom, your thoughts, your insights, and honestly, Dodi's memory. Yeah.
absolutely,
Because that's something that I think that's something that everybody needs in this sport is a little bit of a trailblazer today. So
absolutely inspiration.
thank you very, very much, Carol. Thank you. I know
You're
it took us
welcome.
a minute. We've been working on this for a while. I really appreciate you, dear.
The only other thing I'd like to add as a handler, I had a stayed rule. It applied to everybody, and it had to do with seniority.
Mm.
When you brought out a new dog, you were at the bottom of the list of client dogs, and you went up as those dogs finished or stopped showing. It didn't matter if you were Tootie Longo. When you finished one dog, you went right back to the bottom of the list with the next. And I think my clients appreciated that. And it, there was no, oh, well, she's senior because, she always shows dogs. She was senior because she earned her seniority. And you know what? They were great about it. They thought it was a good thing to do. And I never had any complaints about it. I had complaints when I got a new dog and they were fourth in line. But even Jill Swedlow will tell you, after arguing with me about sending her bitch when her bitch would be fourth, she did come home with a 4-point major, being fourth in line of seniority and bitches.
Oh,
So
jeez.
it's a good thing to know. It's a good thing to practice, and it always worked for me.
Oh,
We lost you there for a minute, Tristan.
my phone says that it's overheating, so
Okay, we have literally fried the airwaves, you guys. I'm just saying. That is amazing. All right, ladies, don't go away. Don't go away. Listeners, thank you for joining us, and we will catch you next week.